Aliou Candé was a 28-year-old young man from a very poor West African country called Guinea-Bissau. He was a farmer, a father, a husband. He lived in a very remote section of Guinea-Bissau. His land was failing. The soil was too dry. When the rains did come, they came too heavy, stayed too long. He could not feed his family. He made that journey through the Saharan desert, ultimately arrives to Libya, which is the most common launching point for many migrants because it's geographically closest and shortest trip across the Mediterranean to reach Italy, the island of Lampedusa. He bought his way onto a trafficker's boat. He and about 130 other migrants made it about 20 hours to sea outside of Libyan national waters into international waters. A drone or airplane flew overhead, spotted them. Those coordinates were called in via EU partner to the Libyan Coast Guard. Libyan Coast Guard went out, scooped them up, arrested them, brought them back to shore, and Aliou Candé was put in the newest and most notoriously brutal of the migrant prisons, a place called Al Mabani, which in Arabic means the buildings. And this is a place that countless NGOs and the UN have documented extortion, rape, murder, torture. And after 2 months of being in this prison, Aliou Candé was killed by a guard.
You mentioned the Libyan Coast Guard there. Coast Guard, that sounds innocuous enough. Tell me about the Libyan Coast Guard, what they are and what happens to migrants who come into contact with them.
Sure. I mean, I think I would actually take one step back and say it's best to think of this as, in some ways, a war on migration. It's a militarized effort to counter something. And that war on migration has three armed forces. There is an air force, there's a navy, and there's an army. The air force, again, metaphorically speaking, is Frontex. That has assets in the air. Those are planes and drones, and they patrol the Mediterranean on behalf of the EU, and their central goal is to locate migrant vessels, the adversary, that are attempting to cross the Mediterranean and reach Europe. And those Frontex drones and planes call in the information to EU member states, Italy, Malta, and that's handed over to the Libyan authorities. Now enter the Navy, metaphorically speaking. That's the Libyan Coast Guard. The Libyan Coast Guard is a force that was created, trained, funded, equipped by the EU. It did not exist before. It's unlike any other Coast Guard on the planet in that normally Coast Guards face outward and they are protecting the coastline of their parent state. In this case, the Libyan Coast Guard faces inward. They face towards Libya, and their job isn't to protect Libya, it's to protect Europe. Their main duty is to pick up migrants trying to reach Europe. That's the Navy part of this war on migration. And then the Army, metaphorically speaking, is on land. Armed forces on land, largely militia run in Libya, that are patrolling and running the entire system of captivity, migrant prisons, 2 dozen of them, that are on land, and that's where all the migrants are placed when they're captured at sea or in the desert.
Now, Ian, whilst you and your team were in Tripoli researching all these connections, you unwillingly, became part of the story yourselves. Tell me about what happened on May 23rd.
May 23rd was a Sunday. This was around 8 o'clock on this Sunday night in Tripoli. I was at the hotel. Knock on the door. My teammates had head out to dinner that night. They were eager to just get out of the hotel and, in an armed convoy were on their way to dinner. I assumed one had turned back perhaps, and that's why there was a knock. I was on the phone with my wife, sort of debriefing from the day. I'd stayed back because I had a lot of work to do. And in barged about a dozen men, armed men. They ordered me onto the floor, hooded me, beat me, broke a couple ribs and damaged my kidneys and banged me up pretty good for quite a while, ransacked the room, then dragged me out barefoot and hooded, put me in a car and took me to a secret prison in Tripoli near the port. My teammates were similarly taken on their way to the restaurant in a pretty surgical, coordinated hit by the same militia, which is part of the UN-recognized government. It goes by the Libyan Intelligence Service, a militia called Al-Nawasi. That militia took them, similarly at gunpoint, blindfolded them, took them to the same secret prison, and we were held there, interrogated daily, kept in isolation cells. Luckily, my wife, because she heard the violence at the outset, had contacted the U.S. State Department, and thus began a very intense pressure campaign by the U.S. government for the Libyan government to find us and immediately release us. And after 7 days in captivity, we were evacuated from the country.
Finally, Ian, what can be done?
You, as a fellow journalist, know our job is not to advocate or dictate policy, but to talk to smart people and convey what they say. And the smart people I talk to, there are two answers I get to this question of what changes might be made. One is practical and short-term, and the other is more fundamental and long-term. The short-term answer, I think, is the EU could be applying more pressure on Libya to clean up its act. The other deeper policy change is stop outsourcing migration control to failed states.